morning everyone and welcome to this debate. Today we are discussing the following motion. The pervasive presence on social media of news and personal anecdotes related to femicides produces more harm than good. I would like, first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Judge Riccardo Versa. And these are my fellow judges. Okay, great. And now I would like for the proposition team to introduce themselves. So let's start from the first speaker.
I am Sofia Marchino. I will be the first speaker and I will also do the reply.
Okay, great.
I'm Matteo Frondotti. I will be the second speaker for the proposition.
I'm Angelica Fornero and I will be the third speaker for the proposition team.
Okay. Thank you to the proposition team for the introduction. Now it's the opposition's turn. So.
I'm Elisabetta Sciacovelli and I will be the first speaker of the opposition team and I will also do the reply.
Okay, great.
I'm Luca Di Toma and I am the second speaker of the opposition team.
Okay, great.
I'm Elena Calabrese and I'm the third speaker of opposition.
Alright. Thank you for your introductions. Now, if there are no further questions or other things, I'd say we can start the debate. Okay. So, to proposition, whenever you want to start, the floor is yours.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, okay. Good afternoon, dear judges, fellow debaters, and spectators. I am Sophia and I'm the first speaker from the proposition team. Today we are debating the motion, the pervasive presence of social media of news and personal anecdotes related to femicides produces more harm than good. We are going to demonstrate as a proposition that the presence of these informations are going to produce more harm than good with 3 arguments. That are first, that this information give a distorted and banalized vision of femicides. Secondly, that invasive and irrespectful spread of personal anecdotes. And third, that polarization of social media. But first, I would like to give you some definitions before moving on to our first argument. We would like to define pervasive as the presence of the same information about something, in this case femicides, for a long time, in this case on social media. As we all know, social media sometimes are spreading informations that are not real or are not verified, and so this is something that we are going to that is going to be present in our second argument. Then personal anecdotes are those personal informations that sometimes are given by the family of the victim, but sometimes are taken or given for sure by those people who write the informations on social media. Now, we as a proposition believe that femicides nowadays is a terrible reality. In Italy, every 3 days a girl is killed. So we think that giving the pervasive presence of information about femicides are giving a distorted vision of femicides. And as a proposition, we think that every woman has the same right to be remembered without her privacy being violated. Indeed, the main stakeholders in this debate, no thank you, indeed the main stakeholders in this debate are the dead women, the ones that are remembered and whose privacy is most of times violated, but also all those women that are not even mentioned by the news. Then the families of the victims, and then all the people who get in contact with these informations on social media. Now I would like to move on to our first argument. So the presence on social media of the pervasive presence on social media of this kind of news. Yes, thank you.
If a problem is pervasive, as you stated, shouldn't be also the news that tackle it be pervasive at all?
The news should be pervasive, but we do not really get why a woman is more important than another, and also we do not get why her privacy should be violated just in order to, as we are going to demonstrate in our second argument, to get more audience, because sometimes on social media the sources are not verified and are not always journals that spread these informations or newspapers. So, again, to our first argument. The pervasive presence of these news gives a distorted vision on femicides. Indeed, we think that the presence of these informations that sometimes are not even true are giving well, let you think, no thank you, are letting think the people that read these informations that a femicide is an exceptional case, which we as a proposition believe it is not. Indeed, as Anna Arendt says in the Evil's Panel, when we believe that harm, as for example the concentration camp, are so bad that they're never going to happen again, then we are banalizing them. And the same happens with femicides, because if we're talking about just one femicide, as the one about Giulia Cecchettin here in Italy, we're just talking about her. While in Italy, every 3 days a girl is killed.
POI.
Yes, thank you.
So are you saying that we should have pervasive information but about all women on social media?
No, we should not have pervasive information about women's anecdotes and privacy that are violating not only the privacy of that girl, who has to be respected, but also the families. Okay, so, also, to give you a proof of that distorted vision over femicides, we have consulted the Book of Facts, and it says that in the entire 2022, it only reported 2 femicides. This is just to give you an example of how the distorted vision and how the pervasive information of only a few femicides are giving a complete distorted vision of femicide, which are banalized. And we as a proposition believe that it is extremely wrong, because femicides are a strong reality and a harmful reality that we should go against. No, thank you. Now, moving on to our second argument, we would like to talk about the invasive and irrespectful spread of personal anecdotes and informations. Indeed, as we said in the definitions, personal anecdotes are most times personal information that sometimes are spread by the family, but sometimes are just given for sure by the sites that write about them. Also, we would like to remind you that privacy is protected by the Declaration of Human Rights. And even though maybe we think that also if the person is dead, her privacy should not be violated, also because these personal anecdotes could also affect the family. This is invasive, indeed, just for not only for that girl, but also for the family. The family, with these pervasive information that sometimes are even false and that are spread everywhere on social media, maybe is keeping reminding of this terrible situation.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Now, I understand that it is a hard question to make, but would you like if, for example, your daughter were killed, and then all her informations, all her chats with a person, or all the phone calls with someone were spread, or all the information about your daughter, your wife, were just spread around because these people, no thank you, want to have audience? Because this is what happens. Because we have, of course, there are some verified sources, so for example, newspapers or the television on the newspapers, but television newspapers. But also on the social media, we know that everybody can have a say, and especially when we have these eye-catching informations, most of people just want to write about them to have more audience, and so sometimes all are writing the informations that are not true or that are polarized, or the third argument is going to be about, because they want to have audience. We think that femicides should not be used as something just to make audience. We think that femicides should be something against we should be sensibilized. And as we have demonstrated, the spread of disinformation on social media is not sensibilizing about femicide, but is giving a distorted vision of femicide. So thank you for listening.
8 minutes and 11 seconds.
Sorry, I know that you guys are using this this one. Could you please maybe lower the volume a little bit?
Yeah, okay.
That way we don't hear two bells ringing at the same time.
The 0 1.
Additional.
Okay, thank you. See that?
Okay.
Okay.
It's pretty long.
So if my fellow judges are ready, then I'd say it's time for oppositions to reply to what proposition I said. So whenever you think you're ready, you may start.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. The proposition's theme is characterized by a huge contradiction because they state that the pervasive presence of femicides on social media causes more harm than good, but at the same time they are venting about some women victims of femicides not being covered enough. Therefore, our proposal would be to talk about them even more. So they are agreeing with us in the saying that we need pervasive information about femicides. We need to talk about all women that are victims of femicides. We want to clear a definition of, because we do not agree with information. When we talk about it in the topic, it talks about news. So news is fact-checked articles published by journalists and or newspapers on social media. Therefore, this is not misinformation, this is true information. They are talking about the fact that it could violate the women's privacy, but actually talking about them, so another contradiction, because when we say we're not talking about them enough, and then we say we talk about them too much and we invade their privacy, but no thank you, but wouldn't the women that were being killed want to have justice, want people to talk about their situation in order for them to have justice? And this is the same goes for the personal anecdotes, because personal anecdotes can be spread only by the family, because only family or friends know the victim, and family members do this for people to get to know the victim better, for them to be able to vent, to be able to console themselves. So this is not an invasion of privacy, because at the end of the day, what the family, what the friends want is justice for their relative or their friend. Yes.
Doesn't every family want justice for their daughter or wife?
Yes, exactly, and this is how they do it, talking about them consistently in a persuasive way. And also, when news talk about their friend or family member that was killed, they are thankful because they are letting everyone know this incredible injustice that their family or friends went through. So now we will go on explaining our line, the team line. So 120 women were killed in Italy in 2023 alone. We agree with the proposition team that this is a huge problem that needs to be solved. Being killed for simply being a woman is way too common. It can't be this way, but it is. And we need to talk about it accordingly, because our lives are fully invaded by this problem. It's a very hot topic right now, and it needs to be discussed. It needs to be treated as it is, because it's a problem that invades our lives. And news outlets obviously want to talk about it as well. And the people involved in the situation, as for friends or family members, want to talk about it. News on femicides being present on social media means that everyone, even people that are not particularly interested in the topic, are going to be in touch with fact-checked information, which is inherently a good thing, because it makes people aware of the problem and lets them really reflect on how they face the problem. Because maybe a person that wasn't interested, seeing all these posts on social media about it, can wonder, why am I not interested in this? Or what is my attitude? No, thank you. What is my attitude towards this topic? Making them change their mindset for the better. Additionally, personal anecdotes firstly allow relatives of victims to rant about their issues and also bring justice to their family member or friend. And secondly, it's an even more powerful method of raising awareness, as it makes people really close with the victims of such atrocities, making themselves feel the same way, feel like they are in the same shoes of the friends or of the victims, wondering what if this could happen to me, to my mother, to my sister, to my friend. And this is a very powerful method of raising awareness to the situation, because this is what we need to do in order to be able to change it, to change for the better, change our culture for the better. And this is only possible when the courage on social media is pervasive, because if it's not, then it could go on the same level of other unimportant news, such as the result of a soccer game, and then becomes marginalized. And this causes extreme harm, because this being a very invasive and cultural problem, we need to talk about it extensively in order to get rid of it. So, all of this will be defended by our team with 3 arguments. Firstly, is that the pervasive presence is caused by a pervasive problem, and I will be explaining this argument. Secondly, the pervasive presence is an effective way to change our culture, and secondly, the pervasive presence, and thirdly, the pervasive presence is the only way to create a community. So I'll move on to explain our first argument. That is that pervasive presence is caused by a pervasive problem. Our social medias reflect our reality. A war erupting in Gaza, we will talk about it. Just the same way as war in Russia and Ukraine. As the same way when we were living inside of a pandemic, we were basically only talking about that because the problem was invasive. AIs are becoming more and more sophisticated. Socials will pervasively spread information, and so on and so on. It's a natural process, and it is inevitable. No, thank you. Socials mirror reality. Therefore, why, if a problem is so pervasive and relevant, would we not want social media to talk about it accordingly? We need the pervasive. No, thank you. We need the pervasive presence of femicides, not just because it is a natural consequence of the state of reality, but most importantly because it casts light on the topic, which is what we need in order to raise awareness to everyone and to switch our culture for the better, to escape the cultural prison of patriarchy. When news coverage is pervasive, you are not able to not see it. You are going to see it. You just are, and it needs to stay that way if we want our world to change. If we want this huge problem, which we agree on, to be solved. It needs to be pervasive, because otherwise it will be just one of the many stuff we see on Instagram and we just scroll past. On the same level of memes or posts about video games. We need it. We need it so bad because of a moral relevance and a practical relevance. Therefore, pervasive presence causes more good than harm because it spreads info in a way that is natural, in a way that is able to change how people view the problem, or even just make people view the problem, because there is a huge issue of people not even caring about the issue. Therefore, it's inevitable. It's about making social relevance reference our world and needs in order to be able to get out of this extreme situation of violence against women. And with this, I would like to end my speech.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay, thanks to both the first speakers, both from the opposition and proposition team, for the wonderful speeches. Now it's proposition's turn again, so we may start with the second speakers.
Thank you. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello, esteemed judges and fellow debaters. Today I will be the second speaker for the proposition team. And today I will be first rebutting to what the opposition team has stated, and then I will be moving on to expanding the argument for a team and presenting the third argument and explaining it. So first of all, for some rebuttals, the opposition team stated that wouldn't all women who are killed want justice? Absolutely, and we're not denying that. We all want all women who have been killed to get their stories told and to get justice. But the thing is that they said that it was a contradiction. They're talking about how the fact that it's pervasive, that we want pervasive presence on social media. But unfortunately, this is a fact motion. And the part of the motion, as they've accepted judges, is the fact that presence on social media of news. And social media of news, we know this for a fact, usually only cover one specific case. So this argument, this contradiction does not exist. Because on social media of news, we only usually focus on one specific case. So not all women, as they want and as we want to, do not get justice. Not to mention that usually femicides that are covered on social media are usually cover women who have been killed by their partners, and maybe do not really cover cases of, for example, women who have been killed by their husbands, by their father, or even, for example, trans women are not usually included in the part of femicides when they're a big part of women who are killed every year. Moving on, we wanted to talk about how they talk about how of reliable information on social media. This is unfortunately not the case, because obviously facts are usually mostly correct on social media, we cannot deny that, but part of the motion is personal anecdotes. And personal anecdotes can be made up, they can be distorted, they can be changed, not to mention the fact that on social media people don't just give facts, they give opinions.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
How can an interview to the father of a victim that has been killed be distorted if it is?
We absolutely, I completely agree, facts cannot be distorted, interviews cannot be distorted, but social media does not only include facts, it does not only include interviews. Social media has opinions, as I was talking about, so these can definitely be not true, they cannot be backed up by facts. Social media is not reliable. As the speaker for the opposition team was talking about, sure, they do reflect what we're talking about right now, but they don't reflect what is actually happening. They reflect what the interest of the people is, but they don't reflect what the facts are. They don't reflect what our reality is. And also connecting to the social media problem, they talked about how if this is not pervasive, people will scroll past. But this is actually part of the problem, because as we've proven, usually the pervasive presence of social media is of a singular case. This means that if people only hear, I will take you later, if people only hear one case all the time, they will get tired of it. We need a continuous presence. We cannot be relying on the pervasive social media presence that is right now, which is one of a singular case, as has happened in Italy, as we were talking about. This, we have to remember, as the first speaker of the proposition said, that evil is banal, and we have to talk about it all the time, because this can happen all the time, and this happens all the time. Please, can I get your PI?
It is better to have a lot of information about a problem or little information about a problem.
Again, all this information is about one specific femicide. Are you saying that all femicides are the same? We don't believe so. We believe that all femicides are different, and usually, as we've talked about, the femicides that are covered by the media are always femicides of a woman killed by their partners. Is that all the femicides that happen in the world? Okay, now I would like to move on to explaining the third argument. So we are going to talk about how the polarization of social media actually does more harm than good in talking about femicide. We know, for example, from the documentary The Social Dilemma, that social media has a polarizing effect. This means that people who already hold an opinion will still keep their opinion, but they will just polarize it and keep going in that direction. This obviously has the consequence that people who already think that we should be talking about femicides will just have a stronger opinion and maybe even be more informed. We will give that, but this also creates an opposition about this problem. So, for example, we all know of cases where people are tired and sick of hearing about this problem because it's so pervasive that they start to create opposition movements. For example, the Not All Men movement. Please go ahead.
So, do you think that all of the students that are protesting against Gaza, they should not do it because the news is so spread throughout social media?
That's not what I'm saying. What we're saying is that people who already believe in the cause of Gaza will keep on and be more informed, sure, but people who, well, in this case, we're talking about femicides, but in the case of femicides, because it has been proven for social media to have a polarizing effect, will just hold their opinions but make it even stronger, and therefore creating an even stronger contrast and just holding to their intolerant opinions even more. This being said, we also have to talk about how it's definitely different, because in the case of femicides, there's a part of privacy, so I don't think that people really have a right to be talking about these people that much in privacy cases. No, thank you. But instead, for the case of Gaza that was given, it's more a global thing, so obviously everybody knows about it and has the right to know about it. But this creates actually a paradox of tolerance, because by posting all these things on social media, we give leeway for people to express their opinions. But we shouldn't be tolerating for these polarizing opinions of hatred against all women to be posted on social media. If we as a tolerant society tolerate intolerant ideals of which is what this outlet of social media creates, because obviously we're not against femicides, we're against the way they're being talked about right now and the way the outlet that is being used deals with them. So obviously this creates the paradox that more people will be even more against the thing because they're hearing about it all the time. We all know how under Instagram posts there are so many men saying like all women should die and that we shouldn't be talking about how these things, and obviously very extremist comments, but this doesn't mean that it's social media that's creating this phenomenon. So and also talking about the stakeholders for this third argument, definitely society as a whole, because we should be educating people from the start, and we can rely on social media that can do all this harm for men specifically, but obviously all people to know about femicides this way. So to sum up and to our three arguments, we showed the judges how this is a problem of generalization, because usually there is only one case being discussed, and so it creates a sort of sui generis problem where people think that this is only a specific case and it's not the normality, which happens all the time. Second of all, we talked about how it's unfair to be giving personal anecdotes and about how privacy is often infringed upon, which is a universal human right, as my first speaker talked about. And finally, I've proven to you how social media is not the right outlet for this, and especially when it's pervasive, because it creates the problem of polarization, and polarization leads to stronger opinions and stronger movements and stronger opinions of hate, which are intolerant, and we as a tolerant society cannot accept. So having said this, thank you so much for listening, and this is why I strongly propose the motion. Thank you.
8 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yes or no?
12.
Okay. Thank you to the proposition, the second speaker, for their speech. Now it's the turn of the opposition again. So, second speaker, whenever you think you're ready, the floor is yours.
Speech will start in 3, 2, 1. I'll start my speech by rebutting what the proposition team has said. So first of all, they have pushed forward from the first proposition team speeches that the fact that every 3 days a girl is killed, and this is commonly known. But we need to ask ourselves why it is commonly known. Because news have been spread about them. And how did this news reach people? Through the pervasion we've fortunately experienced during this the past year. So why it is, and now we need to acknowledge the fact that it is good. Why? Let's give an analogy example in order to understand that. About climate change. Before the 21st century, it was little yet to no presence on the means of communication, for example journals, so there was no sensibilization and relevance in the culture of the problem. So the issue needed to be tackled. So what was the solution? The solution has been the pervasive presence on journals before and then on social media. Why? Because people in this way can get aware of the situation and what happens, and so what are the problems and what is the way in order to solve them. So as reported by the Book of Facts, deliberate pollution caused by ignorance of people has decreased by 29% in the last 10 years. Why? Because before people did not even know what would have been the consequences of their action, or for example, throwing a paper in the streets. But just a second. But then, after being sensibilized, it has brought to improvements. Yes.
Don't you think that sensibilization can be effective without being pervasive?
Actually, sensibilization cannot be as efficient as it is when pervasive, because when we're talking about an important issues, the way to and the news have to be as important as the problem. So, for example, if on 10 news just one is about a femicide, this would be less important than if 5 news out of 10 are about femicides. Why? Because just of numbers, people will read more about them, will be more sensibilized, will search more about what happens. So, and why is this good? Because they will be aware of the problems, and this can bring to sensibilization, as already explained. Going on with the rebuttal. The proposition has brought the example and the rhetoric question of the daughter. Well, actually, I would like if news and the information are spread of my daughter if she's been murdered. Why? Because once my daughter has been killed, I want 2 things. First, justice for the criminal, and second, that no other women are killed just because they are women. How do we reach this? No, thank you. By spreading pervasively and make the issue relevant. So what are the consequences? So in order to do this, we need pervasive presence on social media in order to make people aware. First, on how to handle the problem, so how I'm handling the murder of my daughter, and second, to sensibilize on the action of the murderers. Going on. Proposition has contradicting themselves by saying that presence should be pervasive, but one woman is not more important than another. So they are important, and the proposition is acknowledged and agrees with us about that. But how can this be solved? By talking about it even more. So talking about each and every one of the women that are killed every year. Last point of rebuttal is about the info that are used just for audience and the fake news. First, audience is needed in order to get awareness about a problem. Let's think about deniers of climate change again. So the fact that they have audience and there is has brought to relevance of the issue of climate change. It doesn't mean that everyone then becomes a denier of the climate change. The effects of the deniers' popularity is that the relevance leads to that we want to know how things actually go, if the deniers are saying something that is true or it is false, and this brings to awareness and knowledge. And second, we are talking about news that are given by journals that are reliable, because news are about facts and not personal opinions, and public and personal anecdotes that are given by the parents and the relatives of the victim, so that they cannot be distorted. Now, let's go on with the argumentation part. First, we need to ask ourselves, how is culture changed? So, in order to prove that it is an effective way to change our culture. By the sensibilization and spreading awareness on a theme, as shown with the climate change example. So, let's see how the situation has evolved throughout the history. Throughout the course of the recent history, little yet no sensibilization has been done about femicides. So the idea of the patriarchy has continued to permeate our society. What have been the consequences? We've seen the effects. Men self-assume the power of deciding whether women can or cannot do something, and they're not allowed to think differently from their husbands. So this was the effects. How can we solve these consequences? The way to tackle the problem is to debunk the idea of patriarchy, and sensibilization is needed in order to debunk any to debunk it and change our culture. How is sensibilization made? Again, by spreading it on the means of communication that are more popular today, the social media. And what are the effects of this pervasive presence? I've responded to the POI, but what are the consequences of this pervasive presence? First, we have already seen the effects. In fact, the feminist rates are a lot less high than they were before social media pervasive presence, and then in Parliament we've had the discussion about effective education in order to have sensibilization in schools, and then we're talking about this in today's debate. And second, it is a long-term solution, because in order to eradicate patriarchy and make men understand that they have no power on women. Third argument about the pervasive presence creates a community. So when someone talks about something personal on social media, it creates a community. For example, if I post a photo or a blog that I'm, for example, cooking, I'll create a community. People will comment on it, and we will talk about it. So we'll create a community with the people to share my interests. How does this apply to femicides? In two ways. First, a community between relatives of the victims. In fact, if a relative of a victim of femicides posts about their experience with grief and how they tackle the situation, this will help the other relatives of other victims in order to handle the situation, creating therefore a community. And second, a community between victims. If someone posts about their experience, for example, with violent crimes, this will help other women to first discover if they are in the same answer, in the same situation, in order to prevent a possible murder. And second, it can help women who are dealing with the traumas of being abused. So why does this happen only with the pervasive presence? Because as stated, if not pervasive, it becomes marginal. Therefore, it will be difficult to reach the people, because there will be other news that could have seen even as more important, for example, about sports or other news. So if it is not pervasive, it doesn't reach as effectively as it does when it is pervasive. So we actually need it, and creating a community benefits not only the victims but also the relatives. So seeing that it is an effective way in order to change our culture, and that it creates a community, and these bring positive impacts both for the family of the victims and in order to prevent other murderers, that we are so proud to oppose.
8 minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay, thank you to opposition for the wonderful speech. Now it's the last speaker of proposition's turn, which of course will be the first speaker, so whenever you think you're ready, feel free to start.
In a second.
Yeah, no worries.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone, opponents, dear judges. Today I will be the third speaker for the proposition team discussing today's motion. I will start my speech by rebutting what has been said during the first 2 speeches of my opponents, and then I'm gonna rebuild our case and our team line. First of all, I would like to start from the very first speech they presented in the opponents, and during this speech it was first rebutted the first 2 arguments that were presented by my first speaker of the proposition team, and they highlighted how the fact that news and personal anecdotes being pervasive would not actually focus the attention on only one case, as proven by our first argument. We don't think that's true, because if something is pervasive and focusing in particular on one case, so meaning the same news over and over again, continuously on the same topic, then we wouldn't have other women being talked about. If said, like the second speaker of the opponent said, on 10 news, 5 of them being on femicides, well, and then we want to make them all about different cases, we would need way more than just 5 articles out of 10 as said by the second speaker of the opponents. So we don't think that being pervasive, if we want to represent all the women, we would need no, thank you. We would need a measurement of being pervasive that it's too much. We would have all news or all articles about it, which, you know, would help making people aware of this situation, but we don't think it will be effective, as stated in our... Yes, thank you.
Are you aware of the fact that in order to talk even about other women that have been killed, we need even more pervasive presence on social media?
Yes, we're saying that being even more pervasive and way more pervasive about all the cases, we would have so many articles about it that it would be just overwhelming for the listeners. Because we talk about polarization on social media. We talk about how personal anecdotes are private and are not so reliable. That's not gonna be beneficial for the sensibilization that you want to achieve. We believe that for achieving that sensibilization, we don't need numbers. This is a fault that I find in the line of the opponents. For having the sensibilizations that both teams want to achieve, we don't need numbers. We need to discuss about it. We need thoughts, and we don't reach it by having an article on social media. No, thank you. That's what we need, and we want to achieve. We need people discussing it in an educational level together. We don't need a post on social media that says the view of one particular case. We need something that shows different opinions to help people understand it, because, as we said, polarization will not help people that think differently understanding how bad this problem is. This being said, it was said how personal anecdotes will help others understanding these situations, helping a community, and how this will also help other people that may be in similar situations. Well, that can be true when sharing our own experience, but we're talking about personal anecdotes that are extremely private on sensitive matters. Those are not things that we think should be shared online on social media. No, thank you. We know, for example, the case of Giulia Cecchettin. We have on all over TikTok, Instagram, and other social media screenshots or audios of the chats between Giulia and Filippo, or Giulia and her sister saying how worried she was about Filippo's way of thinking or how possessive he was. Well, definitely that does some way help the case if we're investigating it, but normal people should not be aware of it. They just be no, thank you. They would just need to be knowing the fact that that happened. Also, it was mentioned as an example the deniers of climate change. We don't think that's a proper example, as yes, it became such a bigger movement over the years, but we don't think that the public opinion actually agrees with those movements. A lot of people do not agree with the protests that they have been doing, such blocking the traffic, not making even ambulances pass, such ruining artworks. So we think that the way they're doing with climate change is a little too pervasive and extremist. We do agree with their way of thinking. We think climate change is extremely important, such as femicides, but we don't think that extremist and excessive way is the right way to help sensibilization on this topic and also femicides. We think then that protests on Gaza that were mentioned also, yes, are important and have their own voice on social media, but those were protests that have been done in person. Social media just shows some of them. No, thank you. And we don't need excessively them being showed. Also, they're not directly related to this case we're discussing today. So we overall think that news don't need to be pervasive. Increase in number to be actually efficient and effective when communicating this extremely big problem. We think that numbers are not the thing we should be insisting on, but we should insist on trying to make this sensibilization happen in educational places, schools, or in places not on social media, when we can have a debate about it to help the people that do not understand how bad this problem is, make them understand how actually this is bad and needs to be addressed. Because people just reading an article on social media will not just be just by reading, being like, okay, this is a very big problem. But as we said in our third argument, they will just be on their personal opinion and don't actually change. We need more than that, don't just number or increasing them, but actual discussion. This being said, in our team line, we talked about first how the pervasive use of news and personal anecdotes will not be effective representing all the cases that actually need to be represented and talked about, but it will just make this evil and problems too banal for people to understand how bad they are. Then we talked about how personal information and sensitive information should not be just so overly shared on social media, specifically the very private one. And thirdly, we talked about how internet is particular polarized and our opinion are sure on that, and people can just be persuaded by an article. This being said, thank you for listening to my speech, and this is the end of it.
8 minutes and 12 seconds.
Thanks to Proposition for the wonderful speech. Now it's time for the last speaker of this debate before, of course, the replies, which is going to be the third speaker from opposition team. So the floor is yours.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1, now. Dear judges, do we want to live in a world where women are killed, but people do not talk about it? Because that's the word Proposition team is promoting, and us as opposition do not stand by it. Throughout all of our speeches, we understated and we explained to you how the problem is pervasive. Therefore, there should be a pervasive news coverage about it. And they agreed with us. They said that every 3 days a woman is killed in Italy. Therefore, this means that the problem is so huge that we need a huge news coverage on it. And this is the first time they agreed with us. But this is not the only time they did that. In fact, I would like to divide my rebuttal speech in 3 main points. The first one is contradiction. The second one is about method of information in news, and the third one about privacy. Let's start about the contradiction that were present throughout all over their line and their case. In fact, first of all, they stated, and I quote, "By being more pervasive, we will have more information about other women." That's a phrase that the third speaker of a proposition team stated. In fact, they believe that our motion says that pervasive presence of information in social media covers only the death of one woman. First of all, that is not stated in the motion at all. No, thank you. But even if that was the case, still the solution is on our side of the motion. If you want to talk about more women who are killed, you should have more information, therefore more pervasive information. So even if what you've stated is true, still the solution is on our side of the house. Therefore, this goes to us.
QI.
No, thank you. Second of all, they also said that we do not care about the numbers, but they care about discussing the problem. What is discussing the problem is discussing it on social media. But why we should do it on social media? Because of course, social media is the main way people right now inform themselves. Therefore, is the best platform to talk about these problems if we want to reach a wider audience. So, but by saying that we need to discuss about the problem of women being killed, they are saying that we need pervasive information on social media about these femicides. Therefore, they are also here agreeing with us. And they also stated that pervasive information can help with the investigation. Now, I would like to say that the burden of proposition side is to state that the status quo brings more harm than good. So, by saying that it helps in some way the investigation, they are saying that there is even one benefit to our side of the motion. 1 second. Therefore, they are also agreeing with us.
Doesn't it violate privacy, spreading information, personal information to all the public by social media?
Yeah, first of all, if a relative shares information about a women, first of all, I think they are actually agreeing with themselves if they are doing that action. But more on that topic later on when I will talk about my point about privacy, but also women that are kids will want justice for other women and will want other women that are in the same danger as them to have another way, a solution, a way out of that abuse. Now, let's continue. In fact, I will say that you need pervasive information to talk about other women. They stated that they want to talk about other women, not only one woman, for example, Giulia Cecchettin, therefore we need pervasive information. Now, going on with my second point of rebuttal, that is the one about methods and of information in news. In fact, the first thing that they stated during their speeches is that the news covered on social media are distorted. First of all, news, in this case we are referring to cold hard facts that are based in journalism. Of course, news on social media of journalist page are cold hard checked, are not fake news. So we need this news because these news are real. So actually they're even here agreeing with us and their definition of news is completely false. But going more on that topic, they stated that we cannot rely on social media to inform people, but they want to do it through school. So what is the platform where people have more access to? School or social media? On social media you have all of ages accessing to this platform, while on school only kids. It could be important to inform kids, but it's also important to inform adults that do not go to school. Therefore, if social media is the best platform, no thank you, is the best platform to have access to information, why shouldn't we spread those information on social media? We are not saying on our side of the motion that we should only have pervasive information on social media. We are saying that pervasive information in social media is good, and also there could be also pervasive information in other institutions, for example, at school. We are not saying that this cannot happen, but we need social media primarily. Then they also stated that people who do not care about women that are killed will remain ignorant. But it is a cold hard fact that information is the only way to face ignorance. So because because we think that people do not care about women being killed, we should not talk about the problem at all. If we do not share information, these people will remain ignorant forever. So we want people to remain ignorant forever and not share any information about topics because people will, people can still be on their feet and say, no, they still agree on what they were stating before. We need information to tackle ignorance, and that is also the basis of school that you promoted to us, saying that pervasive information should be in school. School is the use of information to tackle ignorance, so again, this point goes to us. But more of that, you stated that they become tired of it. So, and you brought an example, for example, concentration camp and the Holocaust. First of all, I don't think that people are tired of talking about Holocaust. In fact, we have a day that is used only to talk about that fact. If we didn't talk about the Holocaust so much, we would could have even more genocides. I know there are still genocides right now, but we could have had even more genocides that there are now if we didn't talk about that problem, the Holocaust, as much as we do today. So, no thank you. The example that they used goes to us. And also the example of Gaza. Gaza, it was one of the main topics told today. And why it is that? Because it is a big problem, so we should have big news coverage on it. So we need big coverage news on women that are killed because the problem is so important, is so big, that if we do not cover all of these women that are dead, we will have a society that is based on lies. Because if we do not use news to talk about these women that are killed, we are basically living in a society that is ignorant to the problem. If we don't use news to say, this number of people, of women have been killed, we are living in a society that does not care about this number of women that are killed. We need actual information even to know the number of women that are killed. They brought data or numbers of women that are killed. How did they have access to these data? Because of pervasive information. Now, I would like to talk about the problem of privacy. Privacy, in fact, they said that this news would cause a lack of privacy. And also here they brought the example of concentration camp. So, their reasoning states that talking about the Holocaust goes against the privacy of Jews, basically. But Jews want to talk about the problem. And for example, women want to spread information so this cannot happen to other women. As my second speaker stated, if my daughter is killed, I want to spread the information so that other women will not be killed. Because women who are killed want justice, of course. And also, you stated that we cannot achieve justice through this spread of information. But this is actually a way to achieve justice. For example, the pressure of the government, that if you talk about a problem so much, the government would have to tackle it because the information is so spread out. So our line to this moment still goes intact. So why the pervasive information on social media brings more good than harm? First of all, because it is a natural process and is caused by the presence of a pervasive problem. Second of all, because it changes the culture, and third of all, because it creates a community. And for all these reasons, I'm so proud to oppose. Thank you.
6 seconds.
So with this speech, we conclude the first part of the debate, and now it's time for the second one, which of course is going to be the reply part. And as you all know, opposition in this case starts first. So the floor is yours.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. Dear judges, let me walk you through the debate of today. So let's start with highlighting and analyzing the main point of clash that have been present during this debate. So firstly, I would really like to specify on the issue of coverage of only one specific case brought by the proposition team, which is characterized by a huge contradiction on their side, because firstly, they complain about only very few cases being highlighted and talked about on social media. Therefore, what we have shown through our debates, through our rebuttals, is that this is agreeing with us. Because if there is only a few women being talked about on social media, that means that we need to increase the information that is being spread about them. This means that they are taking it even a step further, saying that the pervasive information that we have now needs to be stepped up because we need to talk more about other women. So basically agreeing with us. Secondly, let's talk about the privacy of victims. They stated that it was being violated by personal anecdotes being spread, but we have asked them, who are they being spread by? The families. They're being spread voluntarily by their families for very important reasons, such as to bring more justice to the victim. They want the huge public, the big public, to know about the victim, to know not only just about their case, but the type of person that has been killed, the type of person that they were, and how it shouldn't happen anymore. We presented to you the example, or they presented to ask us, what would you want if your daughter was being killed? And we said we want justice for her. We would want justice. We would want people to talk about her all the time, for her not to be forgotten. And thirdly, this is also crucial for other potential victims to realize what the situation that of a victim that was, and to realize that maybe they could be in the same position of the victim, and they could become the victim of tomorrow. This is extremely important, not just for the families of the victim to vent about their problems and to talk about how great their parent or relative that was that has been killed was. For the victim, in order for them to have more justice, and also for other potential victims so that they don't risk being in the same situation of other victims. And thirdly, I would like to talk about the distortion of reality in social media. They have stated that yes, sure, a lot of social media outlets have good information and they are fact-checked, and we could even just stop here because this is not fulfilling their burden, because they need to show us how this has our line, our ideas cause more harm than good. And by them saying that, there are a lot of social media outlets that spread good, true, and fact-checked information is not doing so, because then they have gone on to say, but some are spreading misinformation. But then, according to their team and also ours, of course, there is a lot more good information, true fact information being spread around, which is what we want, which is what our team stands for in order to change our culture, in order to try and solve this huge issue of femicides and freeing ourselves and our society from the huge prison of patriarchy and femicides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the opposition team for this wonderful debate that they had. Now it's the closing argument for the proposition speech part, which is going to be the reply. So,
My
feel
speech,
free to start.
my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, good afternoon again. I'm glad to conclude this fair debate. And I would like to start my speech by asking you a question. So, why have we only proposed as examples the one of Giulia Cecchettina? We've only proposed this because the pervasive informations over this specific case are the only ones that are widely spread and are the only ones that give a distorted vision over feminists, over women being killed, because we are talking about only one extremely specific case. This is obvious, as we as a proposition have demonstrated, that this is a distorted vision of the world, because not every femicide is the same. And also, every woman has the right to be remembered. We're talking about something like 100 women killed in a year in Italy, and we don't even know 2 or 3 names of them. Why? Because the information is completely polarized over only one case. And this is why we, as a proposition, are extremely agreeing with the motion. First, now I would like to present the 2 worlds that have been proposed by the proposition and the opposition team. So, on the side of the proposition, we have talked about how every woman has the same right to be remembered and to have justice. Also, to have justice without having our personal information and personal anecdotes being spread because of the respect of the victim and the respect of the families. Again, we have mentioned how the problem is the pervasive informations. That usually the pervasive informations, as also the opposition team stated, are those about personal anecdotes. We as a proposition instead have demonstrated that information is crucial, but only if made by actual and important sources of information like newspapers, and that on social media we have demonstrated that sometimes everybody can write, everybody can give their opinions, and so sometimes especially the personal anecdotes are distorted. And so the privacy is violated. On the side of the opposition, instead, we have had a world where social media is the best information source, as they stated, because up to them, every information on social media is checked. Think that with the proposition have demonstrated it is not. Then they have stated that it is not important to educate people in schools about femicide, and that social media are a better source of information because they exist and everybody can access to them. And also they have contradicted themselves a few times. So for example, when they said, especially with the examples, because they have been talking about Gaza, they have been talking about Ukraine, and how these informations are widely spread, especially on social media, but what they lacked was about privacy. It was a sort of point of clash, even though the opposition quite completely ignored privacy, because they have not been talking about the violation of privacy. Up to them is not so important because for them it is better to violate privacy rather than respecting it, respect the victim, and respect the families. So their world does not really work because nowadays the informations that are spread and that are more pervaded are those about personal anecdotes that are spread by social media and that sometimes are not checked, as we have demonstrated. And we, because we are concrete and we are talking about our world and why we want to oppose to the terrible reality of femicides, we have proven that our vision of the world is better. So this is why we're proud to propose the motion and why we're winning this debate. Thank you.
21.
21? Okay.